The Emotional Terrain in the Young and the Restless Wednesday full episodes update the 4th of March 2026. Has always been shaped as much by psychological inheritance as by present-day choices, and nowhere is that more evident than in the unraveling dynamics between Billy Abbott and Sally Spectra. Billy has long relied on a particular survival mechanism, one that has served him for decades within the volatile ecosystem of Genoa City. He reframes his failures as misunderstandings, his betrayals as reactions, his recklessness as the consequence of not being supported enough. It is a pattern polished over years, particularly in his relationship with Victoria Newman, where guilt became both shield and sword. Whenever his ventures imploded or his impulses spiraled, Billy would pivot the narrative, subtly suggesting that if Victoria had believed in him more fiercely, defended him more loyally, or loved him more unconditionally, perhaps he would not have stumbled. That tactic worked repeatedly, not because Victoria lacked intelligence, but because she was raised in the gravitational field of Victor Newman, a master manipulator who blurred the line between loyalty and obligation. To love in that environment meant to prove devotion through sacrifice. Billy learned how to exploit that conditioning. He learned that if he framed himself as the wounded underdog, Victoria would scramble to compensate, to reassure, to overcorrect. Over time, that dynamic became normalized, almost ritualistic. But Sally is not Victoria, and Billy's attempt to deploy the same emotional choreography feels almost outdated in comparison to her sharper instincts. Sally carries her own scars, yet those scars did not originate in a household defined by a controlling patriarch whose approval was currency. Her trauma is different, rooted in abandonment, ambition gone awry, and the brutal consequences of trusting the wrong people. She has been humiliated publicly, professionally dismantled, and forced to rebuild from nothing more than her own resilience. That process stripped her of certain illusions. When Billy approaches her with softened tones and carefully arranged contrition, she does not immediately absorb the guilt he attempts to redirect. She recognizes the structure of his defense. She hears not remorse but reframing. She sees how he positions himself as misunderstood, as someone who simply needed more belief, more patience, more validation. Sally understands that language intimately because she once used variations of it herself. The difference is that she has grown beyond it. In confronting Billy, Sally does something rare in Genoa City. She speaks from vulnerability without weaponizing it. She explains that her hesitation is not about a lack of affection, nor about punishing him for isolated mistakes, but about patterns. She has learned that patterns are more truthful than promises. Her past has taught her that charm can coexist with chaos, that passion can camouflage instability. She has been drawn before two men who made grand declarations but struggled with accountability. That history carved caution into her. She does not accuse Billy of being irredeemable. She simply articulates that she cannot tether her future to someone who refuses to see how his emotional manipulation distorts relationships. Yet Billy does not truly listen. His mind filters her words through self-reference. When she speaks of old wounds and survival, he hears criticism of him alone. When she speaks of boundaries, he interprets rejection. The tragedy is subtle. Sally is not condemning him. She is describing herself, but Billy's reflex is defensive. He clings to the belief that if he can just phrase things differently, appeal to her empathy, emphasize his intentions over his impact, she will fold. That belief reveals how deeply ingrained his coping mechanism has become. Meanwhile, a parallel thread unfolds within the Newman family that underscores a different dimension of love and control. Nick Newman stands at an age and stage in life that should, theoretically, grant him autonomy beyond parental anxiety. He is not a reckless youth navigating first mistakes. He is a seasoned businessman, a father, even a grandfather if one considers Summer Newman's role as a mother to Harrison. By all external metrics, Nick is grown, established, formidable, yet adulthood does not immunize anyone from concern. Nicky Newman and Victoria still watch him with the same protective tension they carried when he was a bull running through the Newman ranch. That vigilance is not a dismissal of his strength, it is an extension of love. You never stop worrying about those who share your blood, no matter how many boardrooms they conquer or families they build. Nick's current instability amplifies that worry. Even when he insists he is fine, even when he frames his struggles as manageable, the women who know him best detect the tremors beneath the surface. Nikki sees it in the subtle changes of tone, the flashes of irritability that do not align with circumstance. Victoria recognizes when his decisions feel slightly off rhythm, when his confidence seems forced rather than natural. Their concern does not diminish his adulthood, it acknowledges his humanity. The paradox is that Nick resents that worry precisely because he is grown. He does not want to be monitored or corrected. He does not want to feel like a child under scrutiny. Yet the truth is unavoidable. Immaturity does not cancel vulnerability. Strength does not erase susceptibility. What connects Billy's dynamic with Sally and Nick's with his family is the recurring theme of inherited patterns versus conscious choice. Billy learned manipulation as a survival tool within a competitive dynasty. Nick learned self-reliance as armor against a father who equated weakness with failure. Sally learned independence from the rubble of betrayal. Nikki and Victoria learned vigilance from years of chaos. Each character carries an emotional blueprint shaped by upbringing and experience. The conflict arises when those blueprints collide without adjustment. Billy assumes his tactics will remain effective because they always have been. Nick assumes he can handle his struggles alone because admitting otherwise feels like regression. Sally assumes caution is safer than surrender. Nikki and Victoria assume watchfulness is love's obligation. None of them are entirely wrong, yet none are entirely free from distortion. As tensions mount across Genoa City, these quieter psychological battles prove just as volatile as corporate wars or kidnapping threats. Relationships fracture not only because of external enemies but because of internal misalignment. Billy may continue to plead his case, convinced that sincerity will outweigh pattern. Sally may stand firm, knowing that protecting herself does not make her cold. Nick may bristle under maternal concern, even as he subconsciously draws comfort from it. And Nikki and Victoria will continue to worry, because love does not retire simply because someone grows older. In the end, the question hovering over these intertwined lives is not whether they care for one another, it is whether they can break free from the habits that sabotage that care. Genoa City thrives on drama, but its most enduring conflicts are not explosions, they are cycles. And until someone chooses to disrupt the cycle rather than defend it, the same wounds will continue to reopen, generation after generation, disguised as no arguments but rooted in old scars. The deeper one looks into the emotional architecture of the young and the restless, the clearer it becomes that control and love are often confused within the most powerful families of Genoa City. Nowhere is that more evident than in the way Nikki Newman and Victoria Newman respond to Nick Newman's unraveling. Their concern is genuine, their fear rooted in history, yet beneath that fear lies something more complicated. The assumption that they know what is best for him and that it is their right to direct his choices accordingly. Nick is not a reckless teenager in need of supervision. He is a seasoned adult, a father, even a grandfather in the extended sense if one considers Summer's role in Harrison's life. And yet, when Nikki and Victoria begin issuing directives rather than offering support, the dynamic shifts from protection to control. They believe they are intervening out of love, but love within the Newman family has always been filtered through dominance. Their blueprint is Victor Newman, a man who equates authority with affection and guidance with command. Victor rarely asks, he instructs. He does not merely advise, he orchestrates. Growing up under that influence conditioned Nikki and Victoria to interpret decisive interference as devotion. When they step in to tell Nick what he should or should not do, they genuinely believe they are saving him from himself. What they do not fully grasp is how suffocating that can feel to someone already struggling for autonomy. Nick has spent his entire adult life attempting to define himself outside of Victor's shadow, to prove that strength does not require intimidation. Being managed, even by those who love him, reawakens an old resentment, the sense that he is never fully trusted to chart his own path. Nikki and Victoria see urgency. Nick feels surveillance. They see intervention. He feels infantilization. It is not that they are wrong to worry. It is that their method echoes the very patriarch whose emotional dominance shaped all of them. Perhaps there truly is no amount of therapy capable of untangling decades of inherited behavior in a family where power is the primary language. In Genoa City, introspection often loses to instinct, and instinct within the Newman clan defaults to control. This cycle of control and contradiction finds a parallel in another corner of the canvas, where Holden Novak stands at a crossroads of his own making. He has assured Claire Newman that he will no longer involve himself in Audra Charles's schemes. He has delivered the same promise to Audra herself, presenting his withdrawal as a boundary drawn in self-preservation. On the surface, it sounds decisive, mature, responsible. Yet promises are easy when circumstances are calm. It is pressure that reveals truth. And Holden, when cornered, when Audra faces exposure or defeat, finds himself stepping back into the fire on her behalf. This repeated pattern raises uncomfortable questions. Is Holden a liar, telling each woman what she needs to hear in order to preserve his own image? Or is he a man whose judgment collapses under emotional strain? The third possibility may be the most compelling, that his connection to Audra runs deeper than he is willing to admit, even to himself. Audra is not merely a business associate or a lingering complication. She represents a version of intensity that Holden may find impossible to detach from. Their history, layered with shared secrets and moral gray areas, binds them in ways Claire cannot fully penetrate. When Audra is threatened, Holden's instincts override his declarations. He tells himself it is about fairness, about preventing injustice, about ensuring she is not unfairly targeted, but the urgency in his defense suggests something more personal. Claire, perceptive and far less naive than some might assume, senses the inconsistency. Words lose credibility when actions contradict them repeatedly. If Holden truly had no emotional investment left in Audra, detachment would not require such visible effort. His inability to remain uninvolved signals either unresolved attachment or a compulsion to rescue. Both are dangerous foundations for any new relationship. The tragedy is that Holden may genuinely believe he has moved on. Self-deception is often more convincing than intentional deceit. He may not wake each morning intending to mislead Claire. He may sincerely think he has drawn a line. But when the moment of crisis arrives, instinct triumphs over intention. Audra, for her part, understands leverage. She knows how to provoke loyalty, how to position herself as misunderstood or unfairly attacked. Whether she consciously exploits Holden's feelings or simply relies on them instinctively, the result is the same. He gravitates back to her side when stakes rise. That gravitational pull suggests unfinished emotional business. It also mirrors, in subtle ways, the broader theme of inherited behavior seen within the Newman family. Just as Nikki and Victoria default to control because that is what they learned from Victor, Holden defaults to protection because that is the dynamic he has cultivated with Audra. Patterns repeat until someone disrupts them intentionally. Across these intertwined storylines, the common thread is not villainy but emotional habit. Nikki and Victoria control because they equate control with care. Nick resists because autonomy is his armor. Holden promises detachment because he wants to appear decisive, yet he defends Audra because he cannot sever whatever binds them. Claire watches, weighing trust against evidence. In each case, love and loyalty are tangled with power and pride. The question looming over them all is whether awareness will ever translate into change. Perhaps no therapist could fully untangle the Newman legacy of dominance masquerading as devotion. Perhaps Holden cannot separate compassion from attachment. But until these characters confront the uncomfortable truth that their instincts may be rooted in old conditioning rather than present clarity, the cycles will persist. In Genoa City, history is never truly past. It lives in the reflexes of those who believe they are acting freely, even as they repeat the very patterns they claim to reject.